Welcome, welcome to Green Dot Daily. It's the last football Friday of the season. I'm Maria Marino. We're live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel. Very excited to talk Super Bowl 58 with Stuckey, Chris Raybon, Simon Hunter, and Anthony Dabbundo. Let's get right to it. So here's the quarterback matchup on paper. Patrick Mahomes, is 14-3 in his postseason career. Brock Purdy 4-1. The loss came in last year's NFC Championship, you might remember. Against Philly, he left in the first quarter with an elbow injury. Mahomes has thrown 39 touchdowns and 7 picks, 5 touchdowns and 1 pick for Purdy. Mahomes' completion percentage, 67.4. Purdy's is 63.2. So joining me for the last time this NFL season, Stuckey and Chris Raybon. We'll get your favorite picks, but first, little warm up. This game is more important for who? Patrick Mahomes or Brock Purdy? Stuck, what do you think?
I know Raybon, I think, disagrees, so we'll pull. I think there's two sides to this story, but I'm going to go with Brock Purdy. I think that there are still a lot of doubters out there, and while a victory here won't answer all of the questions for everybody, I think it will for a decent portion of that doubting population to beat Patrick Mahomes to get a Super Bowl in his second season, which I believe only 4 previous quarterbacks have done in their second year as a starter. Not even Mahomes did that. And I should say in the second year in the league, Mahomes did it second year as a starter in his third year. But Mahomes is still so young. He's accomplished already so much, and I don't think it's going to be the last time he'll be back. You never know when. And by the way, the Chiefs are going to get credit for just getting here, as they should. They had an up and down season. They went on the road and beat Buffalo, beat Baltimore. Not many expected them to get through the playoffs. It's been an amazing job just to get to this point. I mean, if Mahomes adds one more, it will be crazy, but I think for Purdy, this opportunity early in his career to solidify himself in that San Fran quarterback room is massive. And this is just, look, I know that they basically had to come back in miraculous fashion last week, and they probably should have lost to Green Bay, but this is the opportunity here. The NFC was down this year. San Francisco had an easy schedule. I mean, just take the NFC North, for example. It looks the Bears, the Lions, the Packers, the Vikings, they're all trending up. So I don't think that the NFC, the opportunity to get through the NFC and dominate as much as they did, will be as easy in the future. So I think this is a huge moment for Purdy. You just never know when you're going to be back. The youngest starting quarterback in Super Bowl history was Dan Marino. He was 23 and change. Got there and then never got back, and that was Dan Marino. So I think this is much more important for Purdy. He's the favorite here, trying to get his first one. Anything else for Mahomes is just gravy, and I wholeheartedly expect him to be back here.
All right, Raybon, well, let's hear the other side.
Yeah, well, with Purdy, it would be big, obviously, not only winning in your second year, but knocking off a GOAT or a potential GOAT like Mahomes. But that's the point. Everything Patrick Mahomes does, for me at this point, is historic. And I think looking, like, if you go 5, 10, 15 years into the future, I think it's going to be even more so because, first of all, there's been 8 other teams to win back-to-back Super Bowls. So that is something, you don't know how many chances you're going to get to do it like that. Mahomes has a chance to do that and solidify the dynasty in that sense. And he's in his age 28 season. Brady won his 3rd Super Bowl at age 28. So he could catch Brady this year. Remember, Brady didn't win his 4th till age 37. So Mahomes would have a chance to now overtake Brady as soon as next year and really kind of sprint toward that GOAT conversation even more with this one. And then I just look at it like this, you don't want to squander the best defense you ever had in the Mahomes era so far. Kelsey's 34, Andy Reid is 65. So you don't know how often you'll have this setup where you can just kind of coast through the regular season, but you have these, this elite coach, you have this elite pass catcher that, when you get into the playoffs, how to take care of business. So remember, again, Brady went 9 years between number 3 and number 4. Mahomes is still trying to get number 3. I just think that like we've never seen something like this guy before. I mean, he's already being talked about as, okay, it's a potential scenario where he could overtake Brady one day. Like that's absurd for a 28-year-old quarterback who's his 6th year starting. So I just think in retrospect, the Niners, they're always going to be looked at as a team that was right there, but they're the favorite. Like they're supposed to win. So to me, it's Mahomes.
But Raven, let me ask you this, and for like legacy purposes and long term, yeah, Mahomes winning, I think, would have a longer lasting impact when we're talking about NFL history and looking back. But 2 scenarios for how this game plays out. If Purdy goes out there on Sunday and throws 3 picks and the 49ers lose, think about the reaction. I mean,
and I think
Mahomes did that. No one really changes their perception on Mahomes.
I think you're onto something, Stuck, in terms of like, could a loss hurt Purdy more than a win would help Mahomes? But I'll admit, when I thought about this, I was like easily Purdy. But Raybon, to your credit, I feel like you've put up a very good point, and like I totally see what you're coming from, but ultimately I am still with Stuckey on this, just because I do think Mahomes is already a Hall of Famer. He's going to be on his way to GOAT status, and he's going to be chasing the GOAT regardless of a win or a loss, whereas Purdy's still trying to prove he belongs. So I do still kind of lean Purdy, even though Raybon, I think he made a very good point. So I guess we can move on. To picks. You made your case, Raybon. So Stuckey, let's start with you. What's a pick you want to give out for the big game?
Did you just hand out a participation award for participating in the debate?
No, I mean, look, let me just be clear. There's no wrong answer to that question, in my opinion. So I just happen to be a little more on Stuckey's side with it, but I much respect, Raybon.
Everything Patrick Mahomes ever does is going to be the most important thing any one of our generation does. Like when he's playing in a Super Bowl, he's just by default the most important player because he's Patrick Mahomes. It would be like Tom Brady versus, like, who cares that Nick Foles won a Super Bowl? Like, who cares that, like, it's Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's, to me, that full stop. What's up?
There was no
shout out to Nick
Foles'
Foles' family.
but mine was right.
Okay,
all right. For my Super Bowl pick, I do like the 49ers money line first half. I think there's 3, and I'll get to a prop in a second, but I think there's 3 things that clearly favor the Chiefs in the second half of this game. Obviously, we just talked about Mahomes versus Brady. If Mahomes has the ball late, down 4 versus Purdy, you're going to trust Mahomes. He's been there. He's the best quarterback on the planet. So you have that like quarterback clutch factor. Speaking of clutch factor, the kickers, Moody, who was 84%, he's missed 2 kicks in the playoffs already, versus Butker. Butker, second most accurate kicker behind Justin Tucker in NFL history. He's been here before, the game-winning kick in the Super Bowl last year. So if there's a big kick late, that advantage goes to the Chiefs. And then defensive adjustments, I think, in the second half favor Steve Spagnuolo over Wilkes. But for a prop that I'll give out here, I'll go Elijah Mitchell under 1.5 carries. I think this is essentially just a bet on McCaffrey not getting hurt and or this being like a complete blowout. In the Super Bowl, you're pretty much going to rock with your starters. But if this was like 58-7, right, then you're going to have Elijah Mitchell in there getting carries at the end. But I don't see this game playing out that way. But that's basically what you're betting against here. He got 4 carries last week, but that occurred after McCaffrey left the game with a neck injury. Up until that point, McCaffrey had 100% of the running back carries. 2 weeks off, he's fresh. You ride the horse that got you there. I think he's going to get 100% of the running back carries, and then you're going to have Deebo Samuel get some carries as well. But this is the Christian McCaffrey show. I don't expect Mitchell to get multiple looks unless, like I said, there's either an injury or this is a complete and utter blowout, in which case, Raybon? I think an injury maybe I don't know, conservative 3% chance.
So I usually go about 2.5, because like it's like 5, but then you have to consider it could happen at any point in the game. So then you kind of half it. So yeah, about 2.5%.
And then, a complete blowout. So you're talking, under 10%, both those. Now he could be in the game plan. I could be completely wrong, but I just see McCaffrey getting the full workload here.
I mean, this is kind of a no-brainer for me for the reasons that you laid out. And by the way, congrats to you, because we've done a whole lot of Super Bowl content this week. I haven't heard this prop yet, but we looked it up right before the show. He did play the one snap, but it was a kneel down against Green Bay. So like you said, unless there's anything sort of out of the ordinary happening, he just doesn't get that play. So I'm glad you said 49ers first half money line, because I like the Chiefs in the first quarter. I'll explain more about that later in the show, but let's talk about the game as a whole, Raybon, because I know you like the Chiefs +2.
Yeah, I think this game, once I really dug in and kind of made all my adjustments, I think this game is pretty close to a coin flip. I think the big thing is Kansas City's offense is a lot better than their season-long data indicates. Guys like Hardman, Tony, and Ross, who just responsible for a ton of mistakes, ton of turnovers, low efficiency. Those guys played a combined 1 snap in the conference championship on passing downs. Patrick Mahomes, a lot more efficient when not targeting them. Remember, Rashee Rice wasn't a full-time player till late in the year. Kelsey wasn't playing his full snaps till late in the year. And then non-Pacheco running backs had 123 carries and a full yard per carry less than Pacheco. So I think this Chiefs offense is, pretty underrated, even without Joe Thuney, who in the run game, they just really don't run behind him anyway. And then in the pass game, Allegretti has actually held up quite well thus far. And then when I look at San Francisco's defense, their season-long numbers are great, but remember, they lost Talanoa Hufanga, great safety for them in week 11. And from week 12 on, they dropped from 4th to 22nd in third down pass EPA. And that is not where you want to struggle against Patrick Mahomes, who already is going to pull like a couple out of his hat that just he should never convert. Same thing, tight ends. Like San Francisco's full season numbers look good, but they barely played any good tight ends. Against the really good tight ends they played, it was only 3. They gave up 11 catches for 86 to Hawkinson. They gave up 10 for 102 to Trey McBride. And just in the conference championship, 9 for 97 on 13 targets to Sam Laporta. So I think that Kansas City's offense will be fine. San Francisco obviously is going to be able to run the ball. You'd rather that than be able to pass the ball. And I think Kansas City is going to be probably the best pass defense right up there with Baltimore that San Francisco has faced. And that Baltimore game, I think, looms large because the other 3 losses, guys were hurt. Guys are in and out of the lineup. Purdy might have been concussed. There was some weather. But Baltimore, everyone was healthy. And, San Francisco still came out and played poorly against, a high-quality defense, great defensive mind, kind of like Steve Spagnuolo. So I think that this is a toss-up. It's not like go out and bet the mortgage on Kansas City, but I do think Kansas City is the play here. They're more battle-tested, not just in postseason experience, but remember, they had a rest disadvantage from every week, weeks 12 through 17. Then they play their final 2 playoff games on the road. Meanwhile, San Francisco, this is their first game not at home since December 31st, 2023. So I just think that you're kind of, all the intangibles kind of favor Kansas City. And then Kansas City is kind of trending up compared to their season numbers. San Francisco's trending down. And Patrick Mahomes won against the spread loss as an underdog in his career in 12 appearances as such. And as you mentioned, 14-3 in the postseason straight up. And remember, 2 of those losses to the GOAT, Tom Brady. The third loss, Joe Burrow in the championship, in the AFC championship. But even that game, like, it took a fluky, like, screw up at the end of the first half. Kansas City didn't get points. They were at, like, the 5-yard line. And then it took, like, that amazing game plan by Anarumo where he was just dropping, like, 8 in the coverage all in the second half. And somehow Cincinnati pulled it off. But, I mean, even the losses for Mahomes are like, it's the GOAT twice, and it's by the, razor thin margin against Burrow in a game they could have easily won. So like the Chiefs, anything above a pick 'em.
Most comprehensive analysis, I feel like, of all season from Raybon on this, which makes sense. It is a Super Bowl. And Stuckey, I don't know, like everything that he's saying, I'm trying to think of something on the other side, and I can't think of one. Like, so I mean, maybe I will end up just stop being a chicken and bet the Chiefs +2 here, but like it all seems to be trending Chiefs, and I don't see why they're not favored here, honestly.
Well,
but
let me just say that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stuck.
I was gonna say you have to still take account the full season numbers. I mean, if this game was played, 2 months ago, San Fran might have been a 5-6 point favorite. And I think that the truth's probably somewhere in the middle. People say the Chiefs offense is broken during the year, and it was at points, but and then people say the Chiefs offense is completely fixed now. They have made some material changes that have improved their offense. They've kind of trimmed the fat, so to speak. But there are still some holes. Their tackles are still bad. You're not going to have your all-world guard. And your receiving core is not great. Now, they're just focusing on basically like 3 players, which has helped, and it's eliminated the mistakes. And during the regular season, they did get a bit unlucky with turnovers, penalties, drops. So they were due for some positive regression. But on the other side of the coin, look, they played a Miami defense that had no one left in the front seven. They played a Buffalo defense that was, that played a linebacker who was on vacation the week before off the street, who played 60 snaps. They had injuries at linebacker, defensive back. And then they play the Ravens. The first 2 drives, they look great. Mahomes, there's some Mahomes magic on a 4th down, a ridiculous throw to the corner of the end zone. And they did nothing the rest of the game. Now, they did go a bit conservative, but so I think the truth's somewhere in the middle. And the San Francisco defense has struggled the past 2 weeks. There are some holes there as well, but I don't think they're as bad as they've shown. So, I think that there is a little bit of an overreaction, and it's a very tough game to handicap because of that. And even if you look at the Purdy, he's struggled the most against the most complex defenses he's faced and the best defenses. But even in those games, like a lot of those games, they didn't have Debo and Trent Williams. So that makes it tougher to distill what you should take from those performances. And even the Ravens games, a bunch of turnovers, but there were some fluky tips. So this is one of the more difficult Super Bowls that I can remember from a pure handicapping perspective, because there's just muddied sample sets and where the teams are trending. And you rarely see, the 49ers probably should have lost both their playoff games leading up to this. And then the Chiefs get 2 impressive road wins, but there have been some injuries. And I will say that you mentioned the Baltimore game, Raybon, and then you mentioned the run advantage. That's San Francisco's enormous advantage running the ball, especially with inside, outside zone, play action. That's where the Chiefs struggle the most. Can you imagine if Christian McCaffrey only gets 5 carries in this game? People, like the Ravens game plan, I'm still not over it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if the Niners were 2-point underdogs, I'd be sitting here probably telling you to take the Niners. It's a razor thin margin for this game, but when you look at the common opponent thing with the Ravens, look at the Chiefs in the Super Bowl last year, #1 run offense in Philly. They held them to 3.7 yards a carry, and they give up a lot in the pass game. But now their pass defense is elite, so it really is tough to handicap. You kind of got to really dig deep, and there's no right answer, but I do think once you put it all together, that this game is closer than the market has it.
There is a right answer, but we won't know it until
All right, guys, we could talk about this literally for the rest of the day, but we got to wrap it up. And thanks for everything all season. I'm so glad you guys could come on today. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Stuckey and Chris Raybon, thank you. And there's a lot more where this came from, believe it or not. For all of Stuckey and Raybon's picks, make sure you check out the Sunday 6-pack on the Action Network podcast, out now. And then on Sunday, don't miss the grand finale of the Power Hour starting at 11 a.m. Eastern with Convince Me, followed by the Touchdown Show. And look who's back on Green Dot Daily for the second time this week. What a treat. Simon Hunter, we have you back. How you doing, friend?
Good to be back.
Good. Well, before we get your picks, which I'm sure everyone's dying to hear, I have a pick for you. You ready? just smile and nod. Okay, cool. So here's what I'm thinking. I have been hesitant to bet the full game spread, because I just feel like Kansas City should be favored with how well they've been playing lately and as compared to how the 49ers have been. So I've been having a little pause with that. So the alternative that I've come up with is to bet the Chiefs first quarter money line, which I got at plus 100. And here's the reasoning. So as you know, San Francisco started out slow in both playoff games up to now. And as compared to Kansas City, who has scored on the first possession each of its 3 playoff games. Nice little fun fact I got from Anthony Dabbundo. Patrick Mahomes, we've talked all about it, just how comfortable he is in general, but 4-0 straight up at Allegiant Stadium. And I just think his experience level and the experience of the Chiefs overall is like a nod to them. And that includes Harrison Butker versus Jake Moody. Jake Moody having missed field goals in both playoff games. And I don't hate the fact that if the score is tied at the end of the first quarter, it's a push.
Yeah, I don't hate your thinking behind it, but I already can tell you're going to be one of those people that you're going to be sitting on your couch 10 minutes before kickoff and you're going to bet some side. So
I
can
know.
already
Well,
tell.
I have a feeling that once you tell me what you're doing, I'll end up like probably tagging along.
There you
And
go.
also the only problem with this is, okay, yeah, I won't be like sweating as much throughout the game, but up until kickoff, I'm gonna be so nervous. So
Yeah, but I like this bet. You're also banking on Mahomes, been there before, right? It's
yeah,
like he knows the whole routine. My favorite quote of this whole week was Mahomes has a plan he sticks to for the 2 weeks lead up to the Super Bowl, and now he's stayed to that plan for the last 4 times he's been there. So it's like
yeah,
obviously he's been there before. He knows what he wants to do. Where Purdy can say he's not thinking about it too much, but I mean, just bringing in the human element of it, he's gonna be standing there on the sideline before kickoff, and he's like, I can't believe I'm in the Super Bowl right now
oh,
against Patrick Mahomes. So I like the thinking there. It's like
thank you.
I'm in agreement with you where I bet what I think is going to happen for full game for every quarter. So I'm on this bet as well because I need the Chiefs to come out fast, right? We need them to have a
Yes.
lead, especially for betting them full game. So I'm right there with you where it's like the veteran presence of Mahomes versus the first time being in the Super Bowl against Purdy. You expect the Chiefs to come out fast, where the 49ers, it's going to be a feeling around process a little bit for them.
For sure. And, before the playoffs, like the last real game that the 49ers played was on Christmas when they got blown out by the Ravens. So they've just been like, I don't know, things haven't been like the usual like business for the 49ers. But that being said, you said earlier in the week, you like the Chiefs +2 and you're sticking with it.
Yeah, and I've had so many people push back and question me on this pick where it's during the regular season, I would never bet a public dog like this. Like all the money, all the bets are coming on this Chiefs team. But I try to explain to people that all the season's broken down in many different seasons, and the Super Bowl itself is totally different than the playoffs, the regular season. You bet it differently, you think about it differently, it's viewed differently. So I'm not as worried that this is such a public dog. And Evan cooled my mind a little bit, letting us know that it's not terrible to be a public dog in this position. Usually, when the public is on the side of the dog, it tends to be good for the dog in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, the Mahomes factor, though, I think the betting public is an alliance of I'm done betting against Pat Mahomes. I think most of us bet against him the previous couple of weeks, and we've just been burned by it. And as great as Pat's been, I think it's because of the defense. The defense has really been the game changer for this Chiefs team. This is no doubt the best defense Pat's ever played with. So that to me is we all know we're going to get from Pat in this game. It's all about can this defense stop Purdy and McCaffrey? Like if you can stop that 49ers offense, I have no doubt we're going to get a couple points here from Pat. It's can they get the stops? Because we've seen it this season. The Chiefs are really good when their defense plays well, but when their
Yeah.
defense gives up over 20 points, they actually tend to struggle this year. So it's been interesting watching how Pat's kind of changed with this new team that he's kind of more reliant on the defense. So as someone that's backing the Chiefs here, I understand why you were taking the money line, but I am taking the +2 just because we've seen it time and time again. +2 is a key number.
Yeah, for sure. And not to mention, if I had to play a game for my life, I'd probably want Steve Spagnuolo to be my defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the total. Which way are you going?
Yeah, and again, talking about game script, if I want to back the Chiefs, I can't have this game be a shootout. If this is a shootout, that is not good for this Chiefs team. We know this 49ers offense, when they get rolling, they're one of the best offenses in football. The same cannot be said for the Chiefs. Everything they do is methodical, and that played out this season. They're 14-6 to the under this season, right? That plays into what they want to do. They want to take their time, long drives, grueling drives, and it's also because the defenses they face this year have just played this zone against them, right? They're like, okay, we're not going to let Pat beat us over top. We're going to keep everything in front of us and make it take long, methodical drives. Mahomes going to be happier. He loves taking his time, dinking and dunking down the field. It's what he does so well. So that's actually the same exact defense the 49ers run. They run a lot of zone defense. So again, predicts to the under. And then on the flip side, the 49ers team, they want to run the ball as well. They know the Chiefs, they're incredibly gifted on their secondary, but up front, they can be ran against. So not shocking that we see both teams kind of want to ball control this game and eat away at the clock, right? So the fact that it is 47.5, we've seen a lot of money come in early in the week towards the over. Now, 2 weeks later, right before kickoff, a lot more money started coming on this under, especially professional money. So, yeah, the books have held firm. I've seen a couple books hit 48 and then drop back to 47.5. So it just seems like it's pros versus Stroves. The public, they like the over. I think most professionals I've talked to, they like the under here.
Good to know. What about a prop?
Yeah, it's fun trying to bet these props because again, there's so many different ways you can go in the market. But my favorite one that I still think is really heavily undervalued is Debo's over receiving yards. So it's moved from 57 to 58.5. Now it's up to 59.5. I still like that number. To me, this should be closer to 65, 67. But I think they're overreacting too much to this Chiefs secondary. Their secondary is incredible. The guys on the outside are really good. They are terrible against the slot. They've been bad all season against the slot. And that's just because the outside cornerbacks are so dominant. Teams just attack them in the slot. And that's where Debo loves to line up. So to me, if it's something as simple enough as I can dive into the numbers and see it on film, I know Shanahan's looking at the same thing. And just so happens Debo is one of their best players, now fully healthy coming off that shoulder injuries these past couple of weeks. He's had a couple of weeks to rest here. So to me, this number is lower than it should be just because Debo has been banged up these playoffs. I think most people are still enamored with Ayuk on the outside and maybe giving some love to Kittle. But to me, the value here is going to be Debo. He's just in line for such a huge game.
And also, I think a lot of people expect Christian McCaffrey to have a big game. And if that's happening, it's going to open up everything else, I think, for the 49ers offense. All right, Simon Hunter, I can't believe the Super Bowl is already here. First season, well, together in the books, but I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Yeah, I'll see you at the draft.
Don't get me started. I'm not ready for that. Not ready. Thanks again. To European football now, Premier League to be exact. Big Saturday coming up. 7 matches in total, starting at 7:30 a.m. Eastern with Manchester City, heavily favored taking on Everton. Man City is currently second on the table behind Liverpool, who also plays Burnley at 10 a.m. Eastern. As we bring in Anthony Dabbundo, we will get a Super Bowl pick from you, by the way. But let's start with the reigning champs of the Premier League, Manchester City. How are you betting their match tomorrow?
Yeah, biggest football happening is happening in England this weekend. Actually, not Las Vegas. We've got Manchester City against Everton tomorrow morning. Should be a good match. Everton comes into this one in a weird spot where they've been struggling to find wins lately, but I think they're going to be able to get on the board here. And the reason for that is that City has made a bit of a tweak since they've gotten healthy. They were without Kevin De Bruyne for most of the season, without Erling Haaland for about the last month. And last year, when they had those two guys fit, they played a very conservative style and just let those 2 or 3 players kind of cook and create most of their attack without committing numbers forward. They were elite defensively and won everything. This year, it's been a little different. We have a 1-match sample now. Monday night, they played Brentford, and they put 5 attacking players on the pitch, and it was the most expansive, aggressive City lineup that really I've seen in a long time. And so that's a clear tactical decision that the manager made to put all of those attacking players on the pitch. And the result was that, yes, they created, they scored 3 times. They won the match 3-1. It was never really in doubt, but it left them a little vulnerable defensively. They had Brentford created over 1 expected goal. They had 18 penalty area touches, and Brentford, similar to Everton, is very comfortable playing off the ball, breaking in transition at pace. They're both very good on set pieces, where Brentford almost scored as well. Everton, one of the most efficient set piece teams. And so I think if City's going to continue with this approach, they're going to win a lot of matches. They're probably going to win the league again. but they are a little bit worse defensively this year. And if you look at across all their metrics, whether it's pressing intensity, how much possession they're allowing other teams to have, how many shots they're allowing, all of their defensive metrics have taken a small step back relative to the dominant teams we've seen the last couple of years that won the league. So I think that's where you can get at this City team. And the Everton team total over at -110 is my favorite bet for this match. Also, don't hate like a sprinkle on the first half. We've seen City struggle early and then kind of kick into gear. And I think that if City's going to keep playing these kind of attacking lineups where even their defensive midfielders are getting 5-6 touches in the box of the opponent every game, you're going to see eventually that they give up some goals and probably end up winning this one anyway, but it should be back and forth.
Well, even if they do give up a goal or two and they still are able to win over Everton, they could, at least for the moment, move above Liverpool at the top of the table. But which other match caught your eye for tomorrow?
So there's been a historic run of overs in the Premier League, and overs are hitting this year at a 60% clip, over by 0.4 goals per match, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about soccer, such a low event sport generally, the fact that all of these overs have been hitting at this incredible rate. Last week we had 8 out of the 10 matches go over. It's been a real sea change, and I think the market has struggled to keep up and catch up to the fact that, this is just a different scoring environment. But two teams that have kind of gone against that a bit have been Bournemouth and Fulham, and it's because of their defenses. A lot of the top teams outside of the big three, you've got Liverpool, Arsenal, City, elite defensive metrics, elite teams. After that, everybody else has taken a real step backward defensively. Fulham and Bournemouth are the opposite, and Fulham and Bournemouth since December, if you take out penalties and red cards, 11 on 11 minutes have been two of the top 5 defenses in the league. With Bournemouth, it's a clear tactical change. They were trying to play out and play a lot of short passes, interchange in their own half, and the result was they were giving away a lot of possession and high up and getting killed in transition as a result. They weren't set. They gave away a lot of dumb mistakes that led to goals. Well, their manager made a tweak. They're now playing a lot more long balls, more direct, and it's helped their defense a lot. They're conceding just 1.1 expected goals per match since December, and they've played a pretty tough schedule in that stretch, especially of late, Liverpool, Spurs, etc. So I think that combined with Fulham, who's also improved defensively and still doesn't really have a striker, this total is 2.5, under is +120. These two teams played the day after Christmas. The total was 2.5. It was -110 each way. I really think this should be just a flat 2.5. So the fact that you can get +120, I think it goes under more than half the time. So I'm going to go with under 2.5. Hold my nose. I know I bet a Fulham under last weekend. It didn't hit. So we're looking to rebound. But I think the totals just remain too high for these two defenses that have really made some real strides in the last month or two.
Okay, be honest. Are you more excited to sweat these bets tomorrow or bet the Super Bowl?
We're having a Super Bowl party. That'll be fun. But,
okay.
I'm more excited for. I love just locking in on a Saturday morning there's 30 matches happening between Germany, Spain, England, and I get to just kind of like have information overload and sit on my couch and have multiple screens going. Super Bowl is just so much discussion about one football game. But I mean, I'm going to have plenty of props and action and coin toss. I'm writing a column about the coin toss this year. So there's going to be plenty of action for sure. Don't get me wrong.
Why am I not surprised by your answer? Let's find out what your favorite pick is for the Super Bowl, though.
I'm going to go second half under 23.5, -110. And there's a few different things that go into this. The underlying trend, probably the trend of the season, of all the trends that get discussed on this show, I think the most interesting and kind of most absurd one is that the market never ever caught up to the second half thing with the Chiefs this year, whether they've played with the lead or played from behind. They are 18-2 to the under. That's pretty incredible to think about, given how efficient NFL markets tend to be. And their offense is 28th in points per game in the second half. Their defense is first in points allowed. Traditionally, it was Chiefs were right around 10th in both categories. Every year, the last 4 or 5 years, they would usually play with the lead, so their offense wouldn't be as dynamic. But here's the thing. When their offense was playing from behind, the Chiefs were everybody's favorite team to live bet because they were first every year in EPA per dropback when trailing. This year, they're below average. And this year, they had to be a lot more methodical. So you have two defenses who do not allow explosive plays. They're both top 5 in pass explosiveness allowed. You have one defensive coordinator in Spagnuolo who's been elite at making adjustments all year. I think you're going to see a lot of long, drawn-out drives for both of these offenses that take time off the clock. I love both coaches offensively, Shanahan and Reed, on the script early in the game. I think it could easily be like a quick 7-3, 7-7 kind of start. But I think as this game progresses, the advantages shift to the defense just a little bit. And it's going to take them, forever really to move the ball. The Chiefs are 26th in second half pace in the NFL this year. They were 8th in first half pace. So you see how much they slow down. Also in these playoffs, they've gone heavier, more tight ends on the field, fewer receivers. They did this in the Super Bowl last year. They did it to Baltimore and Buffalo, throwing a lot of tight ends on the field in order to get, more efficiency, success rate efficiency, but you're not going to be as explosive. And so I think that's the result. And I think that's why I like the second half under.
Well, you had me at 18 into to the under for KC games. And it seems like for the second half under, at least right now, you can still get a pretty good price, not having to lay too much juice. All right. I hope you have a great time at your Super Bowl party, an even better time than you will betting the Premier League on Saturday. Anthony Dabbundo, thank you.
Thank you. It should all be fun. And we're rooting for tails this year.
Okay, gotcha. Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following green.daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. That's going to do it for the show. I'm Maria Marino. Thank you so much for watching. And our show is going to take a day off after the Super Bowl. Big surprise. The country might not observe it as a holiday, but we are. So we hope you enjoy the big game, and we'll see you back here Tuesday at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app.